There I was telling my friends my album concept, The Origins of Mr. H. I wanted to turn my father's origin story into a tale that was relatable, particularly to me. If you do not check your wounds in time, you become the wounder. My father's natural ability to enact and justify the massive amounts of harm he caused to women alarmed me, not because it was to admit he was evil, but also to admit that I could be. What part of his nature was in me? He's your cartoon serpent, replied Josie, while downing her bacon, egg, and cheese. She was the one who taught me the magic of having it toasted on a butter roll with ketchup and pepper. In the Bronx, people debate the right way to have its classic sandwiches, but when it came to food, I did not debate. I simply ate. What do you mean? I asked while downing my own. I'm reading The Artist's Way, and she was talking about how we all have this cartoon serpent in our head, the mystical, magical, evil creature that the minute we try to outsmart its negativity, it one-ups us. How do we remove it? I asked curiously. I have ADHD, Deandra. I barely got through 15 pages, she replied. Like myself, we were all about the TikTok trends. If TikTok told us burger rolls were the best way to apply foundation, we were splitting buns and patting ourselves with it. When it came to books or makeup, the internet had truly influenced us. That is. Thus, the next day I was reading The Artist's Way, or rather, Artist's Weighing. On her way to work, Josie dropped off the book, and I had no clue it was a 12-week contract to journal my pain enough that it disassociated with my creativity. It was a beautiful concept, and by page one, I felt read to filth. Shadow artist? Yes. Creativity is God? Check. You have a cartoon serpent, or rather a censor? Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I understood Josie. Our pandemic burnouts had given us the attention span of a kid in a candy store with $20 in her pocket. We wanted everything. We had to make big choices on a budget and could barely figure out how to handle either. Still, it was an intriguing concept how to turn my father's devastation of me into an animated comical figure that I could handle, as it tainted everything I wanted for me. Would my father be that cartoonishly green serpent you see in trees with a vivid red apple? Very Eden. Would he be a duck for how much he quacked off at every corner? Or how about a chameleon-like cat that used its fur and lack of vertebrae to slip away from any situation? It was a strange feeling making my father a clownish man. And that's when I realized I could make him a clown. But it felt like I was turning Pennywise into a crumpet or just a snappy puppy. Yet the book promised it would help me compensate or lighten up how much darker I was at making his darkness. Thus, I chose to make him a clown and called him Mr. H. I still had to keep my father's creepiness intact, but it was what I owed him. In my head, he had a Joaquin Phoenix-style Joker makeup and his hair was slicked back, while he managed to wear designer duds with a personality that cheapened it. For some reason, he was slightly balding, but my actual father had a fantastic Danny Zuko coif. Yet I was not here to question the cartooning of my own serpent. His gregarious laugh sounded like a bullhorn, and his grin was so wide he might as well have been the Cheshire Cat. He looked too evil for how goofy he was, and the cartoon measured the reality I have faced not only my father, but in most of my bullies. They were so heavy for being spiritual mush. As I wake up every day to my cartoon serpent, I have to say The Artist's Way has been helpful, even if, like Josie, the 12-week program becomes 12 years. Like a solid bacon, egg, and cheese, cartooning my father has helped me down his abuse more smoothly. While I always understood it was not personal, it was hard not to feel the pain of how targeted it was towards me, making me wonder if I was inherently born to be a victim. Yet even in cartoons, victimhood lasts for a millisecond, making the resurrection of a character colorful, quick, and like nothing happened at all. If only there was a way to cartoon my healing. Okay, so let's dissect the podcast episode, the story, which you could read at daddyrecovery.com. The first part that really stood out to me was if you don't check your wounds, you become them. And I've always said that. Um, if you define yourself by pain, there's no way that you haven't been painful towards others, even in a subconscious way. I think what made my father evil was that he was very conscious about how much harm he was causing people in terms of intent and purpose. But the flip side of that is that he was also super aware he didn't want to pay consequences. So he just manipulated and scammed people into giving him what he wanted from them, but also making sure that they never like called 911 and reported this crime, this walking crime of a man. And I want to make sure when I do Daddy Recovery that I keep it lighthearted and that I keep it growing, not only for the sake of viewers or listeners, because it is a podcast, but also for the sake of me. Like I think it's very healing is hard. It's very hard because some days you feel like, wow, I am ready to start a cult. I've got wisdom out of my ass. Everybody look to me. And then other days you're like, I know nothing. And that is horrible. How am I supposed to survive life? It's very yo yo, it's very confusing. And I want to find balance because that's what my father took from me. He would either make me the dumbest person on earth, completely unable to do anything right. But when I actually asked for help, suddenly I was the smartest person on earth. And how that has manifested in me was this feeling of I'm either stupid alone or smart alone, but I'm alone. And I think that the problem with that relationship with yourself is that it's just so unhelpful. Like I have lost my ability to really strategize and kind of check myself and be like, okay, this is how you do it. And I want to be lighthearted because I'm lighthearted in nature, but I'm not lighthearted in nurture. And that matters. Like you could be the most loving person in the world, but if you don't love yourself, it feels like a dud. It feels flat. And I've been feeling flat. And, you know, Josie, I love her. She recommended Artist Way. She even gave me the book for $49.99. And like her, I am undiagnosed in my adult ADHD, but it's there. It is there. It's very hard to focus. And I think you should just, anybody who's doing it, I recommend it. I think she says wonderful, like so thoughtful, wise things, but don't rush yourself. Sometimes I could barely get through 5 pages with how much work I have to do, with how much focus I need to have on 20 million things, the perks of being an adult. So don't feel bad that you don't rush it necessarily. But she, you know, she calls you out from the beginning. Are you a shadow artist? Are you the person who puts yourself next to artists but never claims to be one? Are you somebody, you know, who doesn't see that creativity is God? What wants you back. What you want wants you back. Like just the sheer urge is enough a reason to go. And then she talks about the cartoon Serpent. And what I loved about the concept, especially for people that had this horrible toxic figure that just pummeled their confidence, is that it's very hard, and it's something that I want to check with Daddy Recovery. It's very hard not to feel or not to convey the things that make you feel dark as like the darkest ish ever. You know, like I could talk about my father like he was the apocalypse, but he wasn't the apocalypse. He was just an asshole, you know, but he felt like the apocalypse because the abuse was so long and it was so permitted, and it was just like, oh my God, I'm never gonna get rid of this man in my subconscious. And I think the idea of kind of respecting and honoring that he was evil, but also not letting him consistently feel like my ending, not waking up to relive all that abuse and then wonder why my day left, because I'm still fighting him. I'm still feeling him, even when he's gone. And what I loved about the cartoon serpent analogy was you're still giving, you know, we've all seen the villains, the Looney Tunes villains. Like they are villainous and they do cause harm, but at the same time, they're colorful and they're silly. And there's just this feeling of you can overcome them, you can defeat them. They are not your end. And I think kind of goofying my dad was helpful, especially because my father was a goofy man. Like he was not funny, but he thought he was funny. He was very loud, but he thought he was quiet. He was very stupid, but he also knew he was smart enough to kind of weasel his way out of situations. So he was a very duplicitous dual figure. And I think making him silly didn't feel off because that's how he saw himself, even though he was making women cry. And what I wanted in that was what's so funny is that I meditated, like, how would my dad look? And I even made an album cover for the, the origins of Mr. H, the legend, rather, I'm going to call it now, the legend of Mr. H. Business Class is out now. Um, Dear Amy is out now. Just making so many songs out of just to purge all these feelings and have some real self-analysis and self-awareness of how he affected me, but how he doesn't need to anymore. Because that's what healing is about. And I was like, he has like, in my head, he has, the Joker kind of makeup. And I don't know why I thought he was balding because, like I said, he had a Danny Zuko quote. Fantastic hair. Gotta give it to the liar. Fantastic hair. He had a horrible big bullhorn laugh, so I was like, he could keep it. I called him. The reason I said I still had to keep my father's creepiness intact is that I felt like calling him Mr. H felt a little creepy, but he was a little creepy. Like in perspective, extremely charming people, extremely charming scam artists. When you look back on them, you don't know. They kind of creep into your life. Like they're not there and then they're there. Everything's okay and then suddenly your finances are screwed. Like it's this kind of energy of like, how the hell did that little thing, it's like finding a bug in your room, a cockroach. And you're like, how the hell did it get in? I'm in the fifth floor walk up. Did they walk up? It's kind of like that. And with my dad, his ability to just like pop in and then disappear. He was like a human vape. And I just didn't understand it because I felt so consistently monitored. And it's something that I talk about in Daddy Recovery, this feeling of, there were times when I just was really jealous of my dad. Nobody called him out. He called out everybody. And I felt consistently questioned over my very existence by him and, by family. It just felt like I had to overshare to prove I was honest. And even that was questioned. Here was this notorious liar. And everybody was like, what can we do? We just got to trust that this time he's not screwing us. And that juxtaposition, hey, Leo, that video that went viral, bebe, that juxtaposition was a lot for me because I felt like I had committed the crimes and the sins. Like I had destroyed life when I was barely getting to know it. I'm 6. Bebe, cálmate, Coquito. It's okay. My dog, typical Chihuahua. We got to protect the people, except there's no people. It's just us. It's our apartment. Hi, Bebe. I love you. Such a good baby. Such a lovely, honoring baby. And it's been helpful. I think when you're unpacking your pain, there's a point where you start getting repetitive and you start getting stale. And it's not because you have nothing more to say or nothing left to unpack. You're just so shocked by what you have packed. And it's almost like I have to say it to either remind myself, especially if your abuser kind of trained you to, if I tell you the sky is green, and even though you know it's blue, you're calling it green. Like if that was my father, how he treated me, I got to call it green, otherwise I'm going to get the wrath. And what happens is like, I think for me, sometimes I get repetitive because I'm just finally saying that my father did the stuff that he did. On one hand, I'm finally admitting it to myself. And on another hand, I'm just like so shocked by his evil that you don't feel like you've conveyed it enough. Like when you say somebody's evil, you're like, it's like what she's kind of saying, the cartoon Serpent, where it just feels like, been there, done that. Mitch McConnell's still breathing. Trust me, we all know evil. But it does. It could feel so like, yeah, okay, life kind of energy. And as I wake up every day to my cartoon Serpent, I have to say the artist way has been helpful. I think it refreshened my self-awareness and my self-analysis and my analysis of my father and how he affected me, because I don't want to make my dad so easily the villain, not because that wasn't what he was, but then I rip myself of this much needed analysis of how he got there, because it's like I said in the beginning, like he is my dad, like I do have attributes, and I just want to make sure that I don't have his evil, because there were good things to my dad. My dad was super intelligent. I want to be smart. I am smart. My dad was super charming and just had this way of drawing people in, which is why it was so tragic how malicious he was. He was drawing in victims. But I want to draw people in. I don't want to draw them in to hurt them. I want to draw them in to love them, to see how they will love me, you know? Um, so it's kind of something that I've always said. Your weaknesses and your strengths are one and the same. You just decide how to manifest them. Being kind is great, but being overly generous, ugh, and that's something that I suffer from. So I like the artist way. I'm going to continue doing it for the next 12 years. But it has been really, really fun to feel, really fun and really hard, because she warns you, you will cry a lot, you will get angry, and sometimes I do that all in one day. I get happy, I get euphoric, I get wise, and then I get sad, and then I get scared, and I get angry, and I'm like, what the hell is the matter with me? um I guess I'm just human, and I want to analyze my father's humanity, because you could be a good human, you could be a bad human, and sometimes I just feel like it's all about tilting the scale. You can never be a perfect human, right? But you could be a better one. So here's to that. Thank you all for following me. Please follow. I feel like I have 20 million dog hairs on my face. I probably grew a mustache of Chihuahua hair while doing this. But check out daddyrecovery.com for my written stories. Check out the podcast on all platforms. Check out Deandra on all music platforms, Business Class, all of the songs that are um, written based off Daddy Recovery. And of course, follow me on my socials. It always helps. And just join me, because I said it in a previous podcast and I'll say it again. I really want a community. I've been so lonely and alone for a long time, or feeling that way. And they say the internet is all about building community. So here's to that. And I love you. And I really do hope you get better, because you deserve to. Thanks. Yay, that was so nice.